We're live. Hello?
Hello.
Hey, we're live.
Hi. Good to be live. Welcome to the Music Nook, everybody. Um, this is our whatever episode this is, probably fifth or something. Um, so this album, My Teenage Dream Ended, is a very important album to me. I've known about it since around high school, and I told Eve to go into it basically blind. Eve knows nothing about the extremely important lore to this album, so I don't know if that was the best way to do it, to be honest, but I'm curious what Eve made of this album without much knowledge of what's behind it.
Test, test. I thought it was overall a good album. Obviously, not very accessible for me personally. Not a ton of replay value either. This isn't something that I'm just gonna be spinning as like I'm like on my way to class or something like that. But I thought for somebody who was obviously not a professional musician, that it was a well done concept album, especially because she was clearly not going for anything. Like, I don't think she was going for accessible. Like, this is a person who is not a musician making the type of sort of deeply conceptual, alternative, quirky, um sort of weird album, complicated album that typically only a professional musician would be able to pull off. Like, if you're considering it from the perspective of just like sheer listenability and just like sheer just like how fucking pleasing to the ears the music sounds, it's probably not a great album, but considering that this is just kind of, from my understanding, a reality TV star, a pretty young reality TV star, who just, put something together to accompany a book and, chose to put something together that was like very like artsy and alternative. Like, considering it from that perspective, it's a good album. Like, it could have been a lot worse.
I was half expecting you to completely hate it. Um, so the lore behind this album is pretty deep. I guess I'll start with you mentioned that she was a star on MTV's Teen Mom. She was also a star on 16 and Pregnant. Sing.
Could you talk a little bit
And
closer to the microphone?
oh sure. Um, I'll just move the microphone.
Sorry.
She was a star. Is this better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. She was a star of 16 and Pregnant and Teen
Actually,
Mom.
it's still a little
And
quiet, honestly. Sorry.
she was a star of 16 and Pregnant and Teen Mom. Um, she and at some point, either during or after the filming of that show, or before maybe, her the father of her child died in a car crash, and a lot of the autobiography focuses on that to some degree, to what I'm aware, and a lot of this album does as well. So this is a concept album that has a lot to do with death and grief, and um, that's kind of the main driving force behind it. Um, in terms of how it was produced, she also recorded her vocals over just a metronome, over just a click track that told her the tempo of the song, not the actual instrumentals. She'd heard the instrumentals before and approved them, but whenever she was singing, she would just do it over a metronome. So that's part of the reason why her vocals sound so unique on this album. Um, and there's a lot of articles written about this album that I will probably send to you after we're done recording so that you can uh maybe, if you're interested at least. I think that it's very interesting, but I think that this album is one of my favorites, and uh has a lot going for it, but we can go through it track by track.
Wow, yeah, I'm interested for you to explain the storyline, how what each track means, because I didn't really understand that it was focusing on death. My interpretation was that it was about like getting like her heart broken and then her like recovering from that, which I mean I guess like, that probably did happen. But
Mhm.
I didn't realize that. I thought the heartbreak was just like cheating or something like that. I didn't realize that the heartbreak was the baby daddy dying.
Yeah. Um, so all of these songs correspond to a chapter in the autobiography of, I think, the same name. I think the song name is the same as the chapter name,
It is.
and I
Oh,
have not read the autobiography, but that's what I'm aware of. I would really like to read the autobiography, to be honest, but I don't know if I ever will.
before we get into the track list, why is this album so important to you?
Because I think that it received like extremely negative reviews at the time, like
Mm,
extremely like cruel, like honestly, like negative reviews at the time. And at the same time, in the year that it came out, it got placed in the Guardian's top 50 albums of that year. So from the beginning, there was kind of a cult following to it, but it's over time grown in stature a lot and is considered to be one of the foundational albums of hyperpop, like 100 gecs and stuff like that. And it's important to me personally because I think that it uh, communicates extremely personal and uh, like deep themes in a very avant-garde and unusual way, in a way that's very personal to her. It feels like it feels like in a weird way the subject matter matches the tone of the album and the way that the album comes across in a very unique way, in that it sounds so like fucked up and weird, but like that's what it's about. So despite how poppy and like people compared it to like Friday by Rebecca Black a lot, which is also a good song, but
mm.
um uh but uh I forgot what I was saying. Oh yeah, just that I think that the subject matter matches the album itself in a very unique way, and it just hits hard for me personally as someone who often has difficulty expressing myself. That um, something that expresses itself in such a weird way, I think just it hits for me.
Nice.
Yeah.
Test, 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 making sure our volume is good. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and get to the track list. The first track is called The Phone Call That Changed My Life.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I pretty much immediately drove off as I was driving off from my apartment building, hit play on this album. And this is the first track I heard, and it was just like, oh, okay, so this is what we're gonna be doing. Actually, my very first like gut instinct reaction was to be like, damn, this is gonna be dog shit. When I heard just like the super off-kilter vocals, the not very finely tuned auto tune, the sort of high, the weird vocal delivery.
Hmm.
But basically as the first track continued and as I got into the second track, I started to like kind of be able to see the appeal, and I started to be able to kind of like recognize that like this person was not trying to make conventionally quote unquote good music. Um, that the whole purpose of it was to be, experimental and innovative. And as I like came to that realization over the course of the first track or two, I was like, all right, let's sit back and give this thing a chance. That was how the first track, listening to the first track for the first time, went for me.
Yeah. I don't know if we're going to talk about specific lyrics all that much. We might just look through them and talk over the tracks. But I will say, like, looking through the lyrics on their own, like without the musical context, they're very like down lyrics. They're very crushing lyrics.
Hmm.
There's like, my prayer has failed, my worst thoughts have won. My words are few, just don't cry or laughter. Like, that's intense. And it's about
Yeah.
very intense subject matter. And I think that she had written the lyrics in a diary like before, and then brought those to a producer to. There's an interview with the producer of this album that I went to for this, and uh, yeah, that's. I think that it kind of shows in the lyrics. They have a very personal, like diary journal esque feel to them.
Correspond with the tracks on the album. I'm looking up to see if the chapters and the tracks do line up. Do the chapters in My Teenage Dream Ended correspond with the tracks on the album? There we go. That should be good enough. All right, so Gemini has no idea what the fuck I'm talking about. It's like talking about like Sophie and shit, which I mean, I like Sophie, but that has nothing to do with this album. Um, Getting into the second track. I mean, I already kind of talked about my opinion on the second track. 'Cause it was like my kind of realization and like settling into this album happened over the course of the first two tracks. Really, what I just talked about is kind of still applies to the second track. I was like coming to the realization that, oh, this album, is supposed to be experimental and it's not supposed to sound normal. Um,
I don't know what the intention behind it was in that regard. If it was intended to be, like, to what degree they knew they were making something avant-garde. I think that um, it was one producer for the whole album and Farrah Abraham. Um, I don't know to what degree that was intentional, or maybe their intentions were to just make like. She did say that one of her favorite. The producer did say that Farrah Abraham came to her with like a dubstep track and told her that this is what she was into, and
nice.
so it probably wasn't intended to be just like a mainstream pop kind of album, even though this producer has gone on to work with like Justin Bieber in One Direction, interestingly enough. But um, I don't know. I think that for a listener, taking it as something that is experimental and avant-garde is kind of uh, a good way to kind of make sense of it. But I am curious about what their intentions were, but that's not meant to disagree with you or anything. That's just putting something in there.
So yeah, looking at the lyrics now, what do you think the don't tell, don't let it get out means? In my first time,
This
yeah,
Go ahead.
my first time listening to the album, I thought that it was about I thought it was just about drama, basically. Just like drama and not
Mhm.
wanting to spread it. But now that I know that it's from the beginning about death, now the
Mhm.
lyrics don't tell, don't let it get out, don't make quite as much sense to me.
I think that this track seems to be about wanting to just party and forget about your problems. Um, and so I think that The "Don't Tell, Don't Let It Get Out" is about holding back your grief and not letting it, just trying to repress those feelings and not let it get in the way of trying to just party and forget about your problems.
Dang, that gives me chills slightly. This is a pretty dark album. I didn't pick up on the fact that it was about death, and now that I know that, this is actually a very dark album.
Yeah, it is. It recontextualizes the album a lot. I'm not sure if telling you to go into it blind was the best idea, honestly, but I'd never I knew the story before it going in, and everyone I've shown this album to, I've told the story about it going in. So I was curious, kind of.
I
So,
mean, I think I appreciate the album more for it because now I have this like really intense juxtaposition of the sound of the album, which would be more in line with my interpretation of it being mostly about teenage drama, and the reality of the album, which is, you know, this dark contemplation on death. I don't think that juxtaposition would have hit quite as hard for me um, if if I had known it was about death from the first place. You know, I would have like gotten it,
mhm,
and then it wouldn't have been quite as much of like a shock, and there like thus wouldn't have been quite as much appreciation for the uniqueness of this album. How this album is, you know, I think you said hyper pop, but and you know, obviously for me personally, the associations with that are, you know, there can be some negativity and darkness in the lyrics, but overall, you know, it's pretty like, you know, hyped up, amped up, you know, mostly positive feelings when you're listening to it.
mhm,
Um, and so like that's what I thought that was basically like this album was, which I thought it was like a concept album that was about a breakup and about like basically like teenage drama. And so like hyperpop would kind of like fit with that, you know, like it's not as serious.
mhm.
But now that like I know it's serious, it's just like, whoa, that's like a huge 180 for me, and it like really like highlights the difference between the sound of the album and the lyrics of the album as far as, you know, sort of like surface level at a glance mood goes.
Yeah, and that what's interesting about the album is that I feel like even though there's a juxtaposition, it's still like that juxtaposition works to the album's advantage, and it like actually become like the off-kilter vocals and stuff like that, I think make it less of a juxtaposition and more of like a just fitting for the tone of the lyrics in a weird way, which is part of what I really like about it.
I agree to that. I mean, I agree with that to a certain extent for sure. Um, the third track, Caught in the Act. So yeah, like this is, you know, like I thought that this was about two teenage lovers in like their honeymoon phase, you know, which maybe it's a callback, maybe it's like a throwback to that like post post the child's father dying. Maybe
You mean?
Farrah. Oh yeah, pre, sorry. Oh no, no, but like post the father dying, she is calling back to the honeymoon phase is what I meant.
Yeah,
Um
that's what I think might be the case. I've never looked through this album just by the lyrics, by the way, so I might be just as lost as you with some tracks.
yeah, I was
Did the microphone catch me burping right there?
nope.
Dang it.
But now
Dang it,
everybody
I
knows
had
you
to bring
burp.
it up. Now everyone knows. Dang it.
I wonder if the
I
microphone
had
is
it.
picking up the birds outside of my window. It is officially spring.
It is not.
This past Thursday was the last day of winter in Texas, and it is now spring. But anyway, um,
Ah, now the viewers know that there are birds.
there's an annotation on this lyric, "Young minds flatlined."
What the
Um,
fuck? That is not accurate.
yeah,
There is
I
no,
don't.
that is negative view. Negative.
Boo,
Thank you. What are you talking about?
boo. That's fucked up.
That is really, wow.
Um, maybe Soldier Boy is just that trick. All right, I'm gonna
I
let
guess.
Soldier Boy tell him. Um,
Yeah. This one is the one that has the pitched up and pitched down vocals. Like, my parents are asleep. Sneak, sneak. Like, if you remember that at all, that part is iconic. Uh, I
very.
love this song.
This is a very interesting album, the way that it was put together and sort of the sound that it ended up pioneering.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that
Shout out Farrah and her producer.
yeah, I think that this album is still honestly ahead of its time because I feel like hyperpop has not caught up to the darkness of this album. Like I feel like a
Mm,
lot of hyperpop is still very bright and uh like lyrically not that deep. There are some exceptions like Sophie tends to go a bit deeper and be more serious, but despite that, I think that no album has ever really hit this level in hyperpop that I'm aware of. So, uh, at least in the mainstream. So, I really hope that hyperpop can catch up to this album.
yeah, interesting. As you talk more about this album, I find it more and more fascinating, the history of it and the history that it precipitated.
Mhm.
Um, the fourth track, Without This Ring, and without is spelled with space out.
Yes, this one is one of the more sonically normal sounding songs. It has guitar and some other stuff which is clearly digital, but still sounds quite pleasant. And I think that tracks like this are an important part of the album. I'm looking at the lyrics now.
Yeah, it's almost like the album starts off on death and then it recalls back to the history of the relationship before going back to death again.
That's probably what the autobiography would be structured like if I had to guess. So that makes sense.
That's true. I like this line, I don't want to make mistakes, I still need to make more mistakes. Damn.
Yeah,
Like,
and the lyrics
fuck.
below it. Could you scroll up a little bit? Uh, you are my first love, and mistakes sent me to you. I miss that ring. I miss you. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. I miss that feeling. Just kind of that I miss you just kind of hits in the gut. I feel like.
That ring was my first regret. You are my first love, and mistakes sent me to you. Damn. It's almost like she's like mourning the loss of this relationship from two different perspectives. From the perspective of having broken up with him in high school, and then also from the perspective of him, having just died. Because some of these lyrics seem to be suggestive of it being post him dying. Um,
Mhm.
Such as that ring was my first regret. That sounds like it's being reminisced upon from, very far in the future, potentially post him dying. But then Tell Me Why I'm 16 and We're Broken Up, complicated high school drama, um, is obviously, seems to be pre him dying, but post them broken up. It's almost like she's like tying in the two different times she's like grieved the loss of this relationship.
Yeah, or it could be. Uh, The "Tell me why I'm 16 and we're broken up, complicated high school drama." I wonder if that line is, like, intentionally, like, it's almost nostalgically looking back at complicated high school drama, and it's, like, kind of, "Tell me why I'm 16 and we're broken up." I don't know the timeline, so I don't know when he died, but it could be that that's from the perspective of they're broken up because of his death, and she's, like, looking back nostalgically at the high school drama.
Yeah, that's also a potentiality. It's yeah, there's definitely multiple ways to interpret a lot of the lyrics on this album. Um it's a good album. I'm not gonna lie. Oh yeah,
Mhm.
I really like these lyrics on this fifth track, Liar Liar.
Yep.
We're fighting not. We're fighting not. Unlike Adele, I knew every side of you.
The Adele shade.
Yeah, I really like these lyrics.
Mhm.
Um, and then the title of the sixth track is kind of clever, Unplanned Parenthood.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like how contemplative she gets on this track, where this seems to be obviously recalling back to when she first got pregnant. I like the opening lines, oh baby." That's like an exclamation, and obviously a reference to the baby. Um,
Mhm.
and then she's sort of like at this pivotal moment in her life where she doesn't know if the father of her child is going to be like going into this with her. Um,
Mhm.
but she like has this gut feeling that the answer is probably no. That's a really deep insight into something that into a phenomenon that is often just sort of like made fun of in modern popular culture. Just like the concept of the I mean, less so now than probably when this came out. But in 2012, I remember that like teenage moms, it was just kind of like a almost like a meme to like take the piss out of the concept of a teenage mom, probably in part because of reality shows like the ones she participated in. But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Um, this sort of like this very serious phenomenon that should be taken seriously, but often isn't. This is a really, really deep insight into one of the most important aspects of that phenomenon, which is the mother wondering whether or not the father is going to be a part of the child's life, and especially the sort of implication of the gut feeling that the father isn't going to be there
Mhm.
is really, really sort of deep. It's very, very
Yeah.
personal, very intimate insight into this moment.
Mhm.
Wow. I also like these lyrics. The permanent, not permanent almost seems to be like a callback to the we're fighting not. Almost like she's trying to make a decision as to whether or not to keep the child. And then, if that is the case, then I would interpret love means permanent as her deciding that she's already become so attached to this child, and or that she wants to keep it, and or she wants to keep it because the father, is expressing some sort of desire to keep it. Um,
Mhm.
Again, multiple ways to interpret a lot of these lyrics. This is a very poetic and well written album, and it is well produced as well.
Yeah, I do like the production a lot, honestly. "Together or apart, let's set the tone" is kind of a cool closing line.
Yeah, yeah, very, very intimate look into this moment. The seventh track is called,
Oh, Searching for Closure.
yeah.
That's one of the most. That's a piano-led song. One of the more serious sounding ones. Death is in Your Place is such a like raw and simultaneously poetic way to put it.
Mm.
This is new to me as well. Of just an opening line and refrain on the song is very like understated, but like poetically so.
Now that I know that this album is about death, these lines hit a lot harder. I see your friends, family, and all those in between. I see how they've acted. Disrespect, lies, a big mess, lack of love. You deserve better. I'm only trying to make the difference. I'm holding back my tears, my tongue. This kills me. The idea that, she still has feelings for this person and she's watching his family not handle his death well. Um,
Hmm.
obviously that's pretty heart-wrenching.
Hmm. So many dark lines on this song. Like the we're finally at peace. No one will get between us anymore. Like that's such a like it's a clearly loving sentiment, but it's like such a sad like way to put it and sad like circumstances surrounding it. It's very genuine and loving though.
And you often hear sentiments like that expressed by like people who in horror media that's often expressed by people who have killed and or kidnapped their partners. No one will get between us anymore. For me, that line, a phrase like that has sort of a connotation to it of like obsession.
Hmm.
But in this case, it's not about obsession. It's like literally no one will get between us anymore. And that's just like the only silver lining I can find, um, in the wake of your death.
Hmm.
Dang.
Yeah.
The eighth track is called On My Own. Dang. Yeah, I thought all of this was just about her, like, just sort of like getting her heart broken. But this is about, the lines like, my hopes have dropped, my sadness flares, my anger is my power, my heart just stares. This is all about her grieving the loss of the father. Ah,
Hmm.
wow.
Hmm. I think that it's interesting that I feel like it still does work as just a breakup album or just a heartbreak album.
Yeah.
Uh, but I mean, I say just like those aren't big deals too, but like it just parts of it just hit a lot harder knowing how much is behind it that like is a situation that I've never been in and probably never will be in, like this at least. But well, I'm not 16 anymore, so I guess kind of missed the boat. But it's like a very, very raw, intense album.
I
Didn't mean to
want
make light of it, by the way, by saying it that way. That's just how it came out. But I hope that that didn't come across like I was trying to make light of the situation in any way.
I have no idea what you're even talking about.
Okay,
Um,
well, no big deal then. Continue.
I want to blame it all on you, but isn't that so easy to do? Um,
Hmm.
wow. Yeah, these are really getting into some complicated emotions.
Yeah,
I want to be on my own. Not really. Damn.
yeah, yeah. The Sunshine State. This one is like kind of, I think the least serious song on the album is the impression that I've gotten from it. And sonically, this track might be the most experimental sounding ones. Like this could be like a Charlie XCX song or something. It's like so weird sounding, and it's just a tribute to Florida, to the state of Florida.
For me, I interpreted this song as being about recovery, like about recovery
Yeah,
from the heartbreak. Like she's like overcome this difficult situation and she's like, reclaiming her sexuality post motherhood. Um,
she is an adult like performer now as well.
Reclaiming her youth as well, post motherhood. Um, this song, it comes off as non-serious because the lyrics are relatively lighthearted, but I don't know. I still see it as a very important track on the album because following
You're
a
right.
lot of,
You're giving me new appreciation for it.
following several pretty dark tracks, or you can make an argument following 8 dark tracks. You have this sort of like positivity, and for me, like I interpreted it as being about recovery.
Hmm. Great track. I love the Sunshine State, the song at least.
Yeah, the actual Sunshine State,
I was born there.
yeah,
Yeah. So don't be coming at my home state. Nah, nah, I'm kidding. Um, I have like no attachment to it.
that might be for the better, cause damn, it's Florida.
Yeah.
Florida has some shit going on. But
So doesn't it?
huh?
Dig myself out of my own grave is the opening line. That's how you know this is a good album when a
Yeah,
song opens with that.
dig, dig, dig
It sounds
myself out of my
like a
own grave.
wrestler or something, like a professional wrestler. It's so cool.
Damn, this album is a lot darker than I thought it was. My mood is almost like slightly down now because it's like, damn, this person really
Yeah.
like went through it. This isn't about. I thought that this was just like an adult that just sort of like made a concept album about like her first heartbreak as a teenager. But
Hmm.
no, this is a whole ass fucking like I mean obviously I don't want to poo-poo heartbreak. It can be very, very traumatizing, but damn. Now that I know that it's about death, the lyrics for me just come through a lot more powerfully, a lot more poetically, and a lot darker.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so she felt like almost like when the father of the child died, a part of her died with him, and now she's trying to like dig, she's trying to like recover that piece of her that died, that youth and that sexuality, and that uh that positivity. I wonder what the annotation for this is. The lyrics read, heavy traffic on the highway. My eyes are up, up, up. My head's on Thursday. Look past. Past is gone. From back underneath the day. The second verse is written as a stream of consciousness narrative, as exemplified in James Joyce's Ulysses. I think
I
a,
like that. I like comparing this to Ulysses
I think a lot of this album is stream of consciousness. I really like the way
very
this
much
album is
so.
written and the way it's produced. It's a good album, for sure.
It's really one of my favorites, as I've said. I think it's worth returning to, even if you said you don't think you'll return to it. I think it's worth trying again with
Oh yeah, I
more
mean,
context now.
that was at the beginning before like I learned so much about it. Now that like I know more about this album, I think I definitely will be returning to it for sure. Also, I am just it is fucking hilarious how this facial expression with her in the studio is literally the exact same facial expression is like a very similar facial expression to the one in the album cover. Like, I don't know. It's just kind of
It's a
hilarious.
smile.
It's a smile, but like she smiles in this very specific way with this very specific look in her eyes.
Yeah, fair enough.
Oh, and apparently this was the lead single. Jesus, sorry. Apparently this is also the lead single off of the album as well.
Indeed, lead single and last track. Epic.
All right. Well, that is My Teenage Dream Ended. I have never had my perspective on an album so transformed real time while recording a podcast yet. I definitely am probably going to be coming back to this. Now the song in my mind is like gone from like good to like very good.
I'll take it.
Um, yeah. So do you have any closing thoughts?
Not really, except if you haven't listened to this album and you're listening to this podcast and you've made it this far, listen to this album.
Yeah, I would concur with that. It's a pretty good album. But that concludes episode 6 of the Music Nook. We hope to see you guys coming back next week for episode 7, where we are going to be discussing Damn by Kendrick Lamar, my personal
Oh,
favorite Kendrick Lamar album, as well as it's up there with Donda as one of my favorite hip hop albums of all time as well. Um, yeah, I'm really excited to get back into Damn to even just listen to it for the purpose of the podcast. That's how much I love that album.
I recently revisited it actually. So that's very interesting you recommended it. I'm glad.
Hell yeah. All right. Well, we will see you guys next week for that.
All right. Thanks for listening.